This is the best part. They've been draining. So now we put a little bit of, like a half a teaspoon of salt. I've tried limiting the salt because so many people have health problems with it. But you have to have salt with tomatoes. Very important, the sugar. Why do tomatoes really crave sugar? I've never understood that either. I tried not adding butter because this is caloric enough, but you really need the butter. I think the butter prevents the splitting, but I've always had split stuffed tomatoes. My mother's never split. I tried doing things exactly the way she did, and I didn't put butter in for a long time because of the calories, but sometimes mine still split, but my mother's didn't. Must have something to do with the tomatoes. It certainly couldn't be my fault. So now we have it just about ready. And it really looks good. One of the other good things to add calories to this dish is to have potatoes. And potatoes just absorb more of that delicious flavor of the stuffed tomatoes. The potatoes, sometimes when we have new potatoes at the market, at the farmer's market, I just buy those little ones that are really small and put them in skin and all. They're so good. First of all, if we don't support the farmers, they're going to stop doing it. And the ingredients are so good there that you get, not to speak of the whole thing about the environment and the gas that it takes. Oh, this looks so beautiful now. I use a tablespoon. What size a Greek calls this, no one knows. But anyhow, and I just fill them up. These look beautiful. I've frozen them. When my daughter lived in Atlanta, she would talk about, with great longing, about stuffed tomatoes, and I would tell her about the Feast of Saint Stuffed Tomatoes and everything, and she would be almost in tears. Oh, one time I made stuffed tomatoes and froze them and packaged them up and overnighted them, sent them overnight, and they arrived at her office and she opened it up and almost died. And they were good. And I've done them. They lose a little in freezing, but you'll see when we get through cooking these that the skin is already kind of shriveled. You know, it's sometimes things do when they're frozen. Yeah, you can freeze them. I always keep the cap right next to it so we have the right cap on the right tomato. Very important. Sometimes I leave too much of the core in, so we want to fit these on very nicely. My mother was very concerned about the look of things. And one of the things that she hated was the look of the tomatoes. So she tried one time to cook them upside down so that it had a smooth side showing. Oops, a little too much of that. But then you couldn't get the core out. So it didn't work. So she went back to doing her old thing of, now we're all done. So they're ready to go in the oven. So she would pour a little olive oil because it still looks ugly, and she thought it looked better. Breadcrumbs on the top. I really don't understand this, but I do it anyhow. because that's the way she did it. Because really the breadcrumbs don't cover up the ugly thing on top, but that's the way she did it. A little bit of salt, mostly for the potatoes. A little bit of pepper. It's quite a bit of pepper there. And we're ready to put them in the oven at 350. And keep an eye on them. They'll begin to shrivel and, you know, you can tell when they're done. I always check a couple of times, and I turn the potatoes over so they get kind of crusty, like we like oven roasted potatoes. So I just have corn and salad. And what is better in August and September except corn and salad if you live in Michigan? I'm going to check them in a half an hour, turn the potatoes over so they get crispy. Looks delicious. So we have these cooked in the same way exactly. In our family, we fight for the cap, the tomato cap. And this is it, and it's probably going to be delicious. It is. It is delicious.